trafficking, labor trafficking, all those kinds of trafficking from young ages. I've done a lot of work against anti-trafficking here in Oregon. Seattle and Portland are huge for sex trafficking especially. And a lot of kids who are forced into sex trafficking, minors that are in it become 18 and older, and they're still forced into this.
Right.
They are beaten, they are drugged, there's horrible things,
Yeah,
and they stay into it. Now, I am, again, all for people who want to do that, and they're consenting adults, but I'm struggling with how do we determine who is a consenting adult and who is one that was kidnapped, drugged, raped, beaten, and continues in a cycle because they feel hopeless and powerless.
And that is the beauty of getting rid of the black market. So in a similar way that when you have a black market for drugs, you now get drugs provided by the most unsavory people who don't care what the laws are, which means that now something that could have been provided in a store, like alcohol now. Alcohol is a perfect example. Alcohol is legal, people get it at the store. There are still problems with alcohol, but people can get help easily if they have alcohol problems. It isn't criminalized. They don't go to jail for drinking alcohol. Anyone who, for most people who can recreationally enjoy alcohol or whatever, they're able to go to a store and buy it. The stores aren't fighting for turf and all the bad things that come with it. In a similar token, when sex work is provided only in a black market, the most unsavory of people are providing that service. So now, instead of having to provide it out in the open like everyone else, now they are able to go, well, it's really cheap. Force people to do it. They're not even making any money, and they're basically slaves. And if we get them in as children, all the stuff you just said, bring them in as children, get them conditioned to the idea that this is just who they are, and they just have to be like this, basically sex toy that has to be used by people for the rest of their lives to break their spirit and all of that. That's not something that happens in a market where people can choose to do or not do. Here are the two ways that we fight that. Number one, when it is no longer in the black market. When someone who is a sex worker, who is consensually a sex worker, sees this happening, and right now, you can't do anything about it because they can get in trouble too. Now, they can tell someone. They can say, hey, this person over here is not getting help. And people that are in the system are able to go and seek help if they're being abused, because it's like anything else. If in the same way that if someone who was making alcohol in an alcohol plant was being beaten and treated like a slave and forced to work in their underwear in hot conditions, they could just go and get help because that's illegal and you can't do that to them. But that doesn't happen with people that work in meth houses and things like that. Same thing with sex workers. Sex workers will be able to advocate for their own rights and help when they see abusers. The other thing is that right now the police are spending 90% of their time, roughly, on stuff that doesn't have a victim. When you free up all those resources and all of their time to only go after crimes with victims, like sex trafficking, like rape, like murder and everything else, but like sex trafficking, child trafficking and all of that, now they're able to more effectively deal with that because they're not having to also deal with some guy who hired a consensual prostitute or a consensual sex worker or is making pornography in a state that doesn't think that should be legal or what. Now they're able to focus on something that actually has a victim, and including rape. I saw a thing where in the average city there was and forgive me if I'm wrong, it was like an average of a 6-month backlog on rape kits in the average metro area, and that the larger the city is, the larger that backlog is. So you have people that, especially people that are powerful, that have been accused of rape, they're out on bail, they're living their lives, and until that rape kit is processed, sometimes it takes years.